Let's start with this headline that came out. Here it is: World races to contain new COVID threat, the Omicron variant. It says the article says that in announcing new travel restrictions, President Biden, told reporters, "I've decided that we're going to be cautious." So get ready for a new round of restrictions. And it makes me kind of wonder, I mean, this is the time of the year where people get regular flu, okay? And so, yeah, I expected people to get colds and so on. I usually, well, not usually, I haven't had one for maybe a couple of years, but I regularly or periodically get get flus and colds and so on. And usually it's this time of the year. If it's not in October, November, and December, it's maybe at the end of the winter, around what is it, April, thereabouts. And if I don't get it in those two times of the year, I usually don't get it at all. And so for them to say, look, we have the COVID just when the flu comes in, it's kind of suspicious, at least for me. And this is what this is my take on COVID. And I do clarify that I did get the shots, and I got the shots merely because I was going to travel to South America, and I'm glad I did because you don't imagine all the hassle you get because of this COVID thing. And they're just going to tighten the screws now. I mean, right now here in Germany, you can't even take the public transportation unless you come with your COVID shots, documented, your little passport, your visa to go to the streets. And as I understand it, also the all these food stores, especially, and malls. If you still remember what a mall was, they're going to be requiring these things as well. And so this is my take on it. Okay, I'm saying that these are the for and against, the pros and cons. I'm saying that it seems like there is some kind of bug out there. And the reason I think that is that, I think the enemies of the United States, such as, Cuba or North Korea, they would not cooperate with the United States on something like this. They wouldn't go ahead and tell their public, oh, yeah, we've got this COVID thing, so you got to get the shots and you got to stay indoors and all that kind of stuff. No, you would think that at least the enemy countries would not follow the rich people in the United States. So that gives me an idea that there is a bug out there, okay? On the other hand, these are the things that I've got that make me wonder, okay? One is all the profiting that's going on with this COVID, all the control, the fact that they make you wear a mask and now what, you need to carry a passport on the streets, or otherwise the Gestapo will stop you and say, hey, where's your COVID shot? And take you in or fine you or whatever. And then the fact that we have these new strains, specifically at the time that, that it's flu season. And the question is this just an ordinary flu, or is this, something that they've invented? I mean, especially the new strands, that makes you kind of wonder, is there something going on out there? And you might say, well, what could be going on? Okay. Well, I'm just going to, shoot the bull around. Okay. And I'm just going to propose. Let's assume the rich folk have already figured out that they can't solve the world's problems, economic problems. Okay, so maybe they're just looking to extend our lives as much as possible, and maybe this is one way of doing it, getting people under control, telling them, scaring them with this COVID thing. Let's just assume, I'm making an assumption. I'm not saying I believe this. I'm just making an assumption. Let's assume that this is a theory, that this could be going on. That if they know that it's all going down the drain, they might say, well, how can we extend it? Well, one way to extend it is to say, well, yeah, there's this bug out there. You got to cover your face. You got to stay at home. You can't travel, all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, they make some money, or some of them make some money. Others lose because the restaurants, hotels, they're losing money, airlines. But it could happen, something like that. That would be one of the ways that I can imagine that they could create this story, this fib. But then again, I don't think North Korea, Cuba, Russia, China, they would all, shake hands with the U.S. government, okay, and Europe. So again, just a theory, okay? Not that I believe it, but something like that might be going on in the background. Okay, something I talked about the other day in the news this week. Mr. Assange. What would we do without Mr. Assange? What a slick guy. Says U.S. Stonewall's probe into security firm that allegedly spied on Assange for CIA's Spanish judge. Okay, so they put him in the news again. And yeah, this guy's in the news every day. Okay, and the question is whether he's real. And I'm saying he ain't. Not by a long stretch, okay? This guy can't be for real. And here, let me show you some proof, some evidence, okay? This is proof, evidence that Assange is a U.S. government operation, okay? Here you see him with his wife, Stella, running around outside the embassy when? In 2017. Now, if you remember correctly, a couple years earlier, they had all the bobbies surrounding the Ecuadorian embassy. They wouldn't, they said they had the power to go in there and drag him out. And the OAS here in the Western world, they had a big powwow saying, how dare they? How can the British think that they can go into the embassy and drag him out? That's a violation of the diplomatic protocol, etc., etc. And here, a couple years later, this guy's running around the streets of London. Now, where were the bobbies when we needed them here? I mean, this is when the MI6 and the MI5 should have gone in there and arrested him. What's this guy doing on the streets? And then, this thing about killing him and murdering him that they're spreading out now. Look at the bottom right picture there where it says The Guardian. You had the bobbies, and this guy, Assange, was talking from the window, out to the public that was gathered there. I mean, if they really wanted to kill him, this was an easier shot than JFK. They could have shot him down right there. And, if he's such a criminal, I don't think anybody would have, lost any sleep over it, right? So, no, this guy for sure is not for real. But, some people believe him and believe this other bozo, Ed Snowden, which the United States created. And yeah, they have to do these operations. Remember, the United States spends over $80 billion a year in intelligence overall. And people say, well, yeah, we have to defend ourselves against China and against Russia. And no, the number one enemy of the U.S. government is not either Russia or China, it's the American people. Okay? It's the people of the United States. Those are the ones they have to have under control, because if you don't have those under control, forget about China and Russia. Okay? You got a problem right there in front of you. So those are the people they have to lead by the nose. So one fellow says, how is the U.S. government responsible for Assange and Snowden having a public profile? Okay? Do the governments control the media? Are the people who work in the news media honest but dumb, or are they actual disinfo agents? Like all of them, or what are we talking about here? And what of those that own the media? Okay? And yeah, I'll just give you my 5 cents worth. The United States is the country that has the least freedom of press. Okay, it's the one that has the least freedom of press. It has to be, first of all, because it's the number one empire. And so it has to put all the controls in place to make sure that, the right information reaches the public. And especially on things that matter. Okay, it has to be on things that matter. If one person out there, says, okay, we have this Hollywood couple, Joe Blow and Susie Q, and they're separating, they're getting a divorce. And so you're going to have all these different opinions about them. One guy say, well, it's his fault. And the other person's going to say, no, it's her fault. And they're going to have opinions, a million. Nobody cares about that. That's dumb blonde kind of stuff, small talk. So there you can have a million opinions. You can also have Democrats against Republicans. And they're going to, they have their newspapers, their outlets, and they're going to shoot, mud at each other. But it's when things count, things that are important, where you test freedom of the press. Those are the ones that are important. JFK's assassination, 9/11, and these two bozos, Assange and Snowden. That's where it counts. And then you find, eerily, right? You find unanimity. You find that all newspapers, all TV stations in the United States, all radio stations, all of them, 150% of them. JFK is, a lot of people doubt, and they have blogs and they even put videos out there, but the official version is what's spread throughout the main channels, right, out there. And what do they say? Well, they say that, oh, you're a conspiracist. We have all these conspiracists, all these nuts out there. And they believe that JFK was assassinated by the U.S. government. Can you believe that? These people are nuts, they're crazy. That's how they treat you, And 9/11, oh, we have all these conspiracists out there. And Assange and Snowden, 150% unanimity. Not one newspaper, not one TV station, not one radio station in the entire United States even suspects, even considers, even ponders or theorizes that maybe, just maybe, this could be a U.S. government operation. You would think that at least one newspaper, one TV station, one radio station would say, hey, just maybe, just let's just try a theory there, right? Not one of them. Everyone has gone in the same direction. And yeah, here you see why, part of the reason why. Okay, here's this fellow, and his name is Rupert Murdoch, and he owns practically all the news in the United States. Billionaire businessman, media tycoon, and investor. And you can see there how the blogs portray him as, a guy who dominates the politicians, and he's the Murdoctopus. Yeah, because he controls a lot of stuff. He's the puppeteer, okay? Through his company, News Corp, he is the owner of hundreds of local, national, and international publishing outlets around the world. There you have UK, Australia, US, okay? Some of the things he owns. With a net worth of $22 billion as of 28th July 2021, Murdoch is the 31st richest person in the United States and the 71st richest in the world. Okay, so yeah, good old Rupert, he owns a lot, but I mean, who do you think he goes around with? Well, he goes around with his buddies, other people who own the media, and they all think the same way. And so, and the things that matter, like 9/11, JFK assassination, Assange and Snowden, they play ball. They play ball. They're not going to oppose the U.S. government, because now you're not talking about Republican against Democrat. Now you're talking about 250 years of democracy going down the drain if people even suspect that that could be the case. And so you have to drive it in. And the new generations, a lot of them don't do research, and they just buy the official version because it's 90% of the word that's out there. So you think a lot of them are going to say, oh yeah, 9/11 was done by George Bush. No, of course not. They're going to go out there and say, oh, there's this guy Bin Laden who apparently burned the buildings, and that's all they know. And, on top of that, you have YouTube wiping out videos. They wiped out 3 of my videos. You need to be over 150 years old to listen to the 9/11 anthem that I put out there. So they blocked it. So, you got all this going on, and who's doing that? Well, it's all these rich people who say, hey, get rid of all the YouTube videos that talk against 9/11 and just put the ones that talk in favor. Let's just put, why would they do that unless they're trying to prepare the new generations just to repeat the party lie? Okay? So, yeah, the United States is number one in least freedom of the press. Now, China and Russia, they don't have very much freedom of the press, but people are aware of it because they're so they're so blunt in the way they do it. They're not subtle. So everybody knows the Chinese Communist Party or the Cuban Communist Party is just going to put a lot of propaganda, and it's so obvious, so people know it, even in the country. They're very much aware of that. But in the United States, people actually believe the news. They say, no, we have a democratic country, we have free press here. And that's why they believe it, because the United States is much more subtle in the way it does it. And in that sense, yeah, it is the least freedom of the press country in the world. Okay, here's another comment along these same lines. It might be in American interest to start a world war. Whoa. To unify its population and prevent a civil war. Okay, politicians have done that in the past, where they create a diversion, okay, so that people stop thinking about one thing and instead concentrate on another. Except that I would say that a world war is probably much more dangerous than what he says there, a race war within the United States. So I don't know. And the question for you is, will there ever be a civil war in the United States? Is this ramping up? Are we having the right against the left, killing each other? Maybe on the streets. One group kills someone from the other side. Yeah, that might happen. Will that blow over into a full-scale civil war where military people who, command forces take sides and shoot against each other? I don't think so. But, again, people have different opinions about these things. Okay, another thought around the war issue. We have a lot of war stuff today. The war doesn't put people at work. Well, it's absolute nonsense, Bill, because I said that. It doesn't put people to work. I don't know where you got that, okay? First, because we are already at war. The world is at war, or rather several wars in different countries at the same time. Yeah, that's not a war, a world war. We were talking about World War III here, the big guys, and I mean the big guys confronting big guys, not using, all these tiny countries where they meet and the forces that fight are the local ones and they just feed them weapons. That's different than, a head-on clash between, the two monsters out there. That's very different. Okay, so I just want to put it in the right context. This perennial state of war gives work to billions of individuals. Yeah, and again, he took that out of context because the context is that in World War II, like you see there, women especially came out of the houses, especially the young girls, and they started working at the factories. They had jobs, and a lot of them came out of the houses and started working. Men, they went out to Europe and got killed, or Asia and got killed. But what happened was all these people were working in the armaments business. What is armaments? That's known as manufacturing. Okay? They worked in industry. And I'm saying that if there is a war now, people are not going to be working by the gazillions in the manufacturing segment of the economy. That's what I'm saying. And so, yeah, they're going to continue working what they are now. In fact, I don't even think they're going to be working in what they're working now because we have all these killer satellites out there that the first thing they'll wipe out will be the satellites. And you won't have any internet. And if you don't have any internet, forget about guiding the missiles. That's the least of the problems. The big problem will be that they wiped out all the money on the planet. They wiped out all the money because all the money is on the internet. Oh, my bitcoins, oh, they're gone. Yeah, yeah, how many did you have? Yeah, internet is very frail. If the satellite goes down, that's it for the internet, guys. No communication, and suddenly you're as poor as or as rich as Bill Gates. Okay, so keep that in mind. The internet is everything right now, and all the jobs depend on the internet now as well. You wipe out the internet, you wiped out close to 80% of the jobs in the United States, in the world. Okay, lots of jobs depend on the internet now. So we don't want to mess with those satellites, okay? Please don't touch them. But now we've got the killer satellites. So yeah, we got what we needed, the antidote to the satellites, to the internet. So if you ever were upset about the internet, maybe the Russians will help you. Okay, here we have the fourth industrial revolution. What the hell is that? Planned, designed, and in progress. Okay, that's being stimulated, spread out by some rich people. And here you have a few of them. They're famous because they're behind this fourth industrial revolution. And you have this other fella who I've been tracking for many years now, Ray Kurzweil. And he says, the singularity, a point where the development of technology becomes so fast that humanity will no longer be able to keep up with it. Okay, the singularity. Remember, that comes out of mathematics, right? Black hole has singularity at its center. What's a particle? It's a singularity. Everything's a singularity. What's an event? Singularity, a point in space-time, etc. Yeah. The singularity, in other words, is the moment AI, artificial intelligence, begins to evolve without us. Okay. So these people are all saying, oh, we're very close to the singularity. In fact, that's what Kurzweil has been saying for many years, saying we're very close to the singularity, to the point where the AIs take off and we can't control them anymore. Now they run the world, because now they can invent stuff and create stuff, and they're smarter than us at that point. And so now their intelligence grows exponentially, and they can think things exponentially while our tiny brains, they can't keep up. Well, these guys, tiny brains, I'm sorry. They can't keep up. So what is this fourth industrial revolution? Let's find out. I want to know what this revolution is all about because I must have missed it or I'm missing it. Okay, one of the two. And here it is, the fourth industrial revolution. The first one was water and steam power to mechanized production. Okay, and you're talking about maybe the late 1700s, early 1800s, where they invented steam, right? And they started driving some of the engines with steams. You heard the steam locomotive, the steam ships, etc. Okay, and then second one was electric power to create mass production, and that started probably in the late 19th century, for sure, most of the 20th century. We started putting electricity behind things. Okay. Refrigerators, washing machines, television. We didn't have any of that in the 19th century. That started all in the 20th century. And the third one, again, I must have missed this one because I only recognize the first revolution, the only revolution, which was that second one there, the electric power. Well, really both of them, first and second. Okay, but here it says electronics and information technology to automate production. That was the third one. Okay, and the fourth one, what is this fourth one all about? It says the digital revolution, characterized by a fusion of technologies that is blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. Well, the first comment I want to say is that, revolution requires masses of people. That's known as a revolution. Until that happens, you don't have a revolution. You need masses of people. And so one of the issues there is whether these things are going to put masses of workers to work. Okay, that's the first one I'm saying. Yeah, you got to look at. But the question is, what if you don't put people to work in manufacturing, into industry, do you have a revolution? These people are talking about minor changes, cosmetic changes in the world of industry. But it was industry all along, all the way from the 18th century all the way to the 21st century. It was all industry, manufacturing. And that's become smaller and smaller and smaller in the last 200 years. Today, in the advanced nations, it's anywhere between 15 and 20% of their GDP and of their workforce. Most people work, about 80% or near 80%, work in services, primarily today, and moving closer to internet services. Ads, entertainment. We're in the BS world now. We're producing nothing. And manufacturing is becoming a smaller percent of GDP and a smaller percentage of the workforce. And again, I don't think even a war is going to put people to work in manufacturing, because they do have, first of all, they have all the equipment they need out there. For the most part, they're all prepared for the next war. But even if they need to ramp up, it's going to be done by the AIs, the robots. We have machines producing, the new bombs and so on, a lot of the parts and so on. So it's not going to put people to work. And so when I talk about a war not putting people to work, I'm talking about a war putting people to work in manufacturing. That's what I'm talking about, because that's what solved the problem for what happened in the 30s, which was the Depression era. People couldn't find work and things were pretty lousy. The war helped everybody. It helped Germany as well as the United States. It helped Russia for sure. Helped England and France, except that they were immediately conquered by Hitler. But, after the destruction occurred, after 5 years, 6 years there, manufacturing ramped up. It was the manufacturing age at its highest. It was the golden age of manufacturing. And yeah, after all that happened, we moved into services. And now what is manufacturing today? We have all the goods we need, tangible goods. I mean, you probably have a house or rent one. You have a roof over your head. You probably have a fridge. You probably have an oven, what is it, kitchen, a washing machine, a dryer. Everybody's got one of those pretty much, at least in the advanced nations. And he who doesn't have it in the poor nation wants to have it. And that's not going to drive, because these are the poor people, again, it's not going to drive a demand to such a point where you have manufacturing grow again. No, manufacturing's over. We're done with manufacturing. And with the mode, the family type, which is related to the manufacturing, which is the nuclear family, mom, pop, and kids. That's over as well. We're down to services. Services is the single person, the bachelor, or the homosexual, people who don't produce children, essentially. In any way you look at it, you're not going to be producing children. Everybody's moved to the city where it's very crowded. You can't have children in the cities. And so we're not going to go back to the days of old where, women had, 10 children. Half of them died, and so nobody cared because you had 5 others. That's over now. Right now, if anything, you get one, maybe. If the woman is brave enough to go through the pains, they don't even want to go through that. So not only do we have manufacturing that phased into services, but with services comes a new type of family, which is the single person. Nobody knows everybody. Everybody's on his own. Or like the Three Stooges once said, they said, all for one and one for all. And Curdy says, I'm for myself. Everybody's for himself now, okay? That's what it is, more or less. That's the direction which we're going. Okay, here's another comment. Well, it says, your trade pyramid, I talked about that a little while ago, model is missing the most important, the trade of the money. Where did you put the money trade? Money trade? What the hell is the money trade? There is no such thing as money trade. All we do is trade what you see there. You change services for gadgets, gadgets for food, and food for services, and so on. That's it. That's all you trade. What money is one of those three in stored value. Okay, that's what money is. Money is just a medium of exchange for one of those things for the other. One of those groups for the other. That's all it is. So when you sell something, well, someone buys it and he gives you money. But where did he get the money? Well, he had to sell something and he sold one of those three to get that money. So money is just stored value. But all you have is one of those three. That's what we're trading. So there is no such thing as trade in money. Okay. Again, don't get confused with this thing where today people are investing in bitcoins and so on. That's again, where did they get the money? What does the money represent? Okay. And you say, well, it represents value. Well, where did you get that value? Well, you got it either for providing a service, providing a good, or maybe food, which is another tangible good, right? So it's trade is only one of those three. There's no other thing except those three. Okay, here's another fellow that says, talks two guys, in fact. One guy says the Cubans were responsible for JFK's death, and rightly on. He was trying to kill Castro after all. Another fellow says JFK was shot at from multiple shooters at different angles. This was and is standard military practice. Okay, well, I'm, as you know, I think I'm a conspiracist, one of those nuts. Kennedy was murdered by the U.S. government, specifically, as I mentioned the other day. I think the leaders of, there were many people involved, but primarily inside the U.S. government was Lyndon Johnson, J. Edgar Hoover, and Allen Dulles, head of the FBI, head of the CIA, and head of the U.S. government. Before he was vice president until Kennedy was dead. So those three were the masterminds, the ones who pushed it the most, and they had a lot of conservative groups in Washington, D.C. that did not like the Kennedys at all. They were too liberal. The world wasn't ready for the Kennedys, especially the United States. They weren't ready for them. And so, all these conservatives, especially, the oil men in Texas and so on, the mafias who were trying to recover their properties in Cuba, there were a lot of people who hated the Kennedys. After all, he was the guy who won with the least margin over Nixon. Okay, so, they didn't really want him. In fact, as I understand it, Sam Giancana, who was the head of the Chicago outfit, either him or his boss, he was like number two, and the other fellow was retiring or whatever, but gave him counsel, more or less like what happens in Cuba today, where you have Castro in the background, really governing or giving suggestions. But Sam Giancana apparently mustered the votes in Illinois to go in favor of Kennedy, thinking that maybe by appeasing him, Bobby Kennedy, who was prosecuting all these mafiosi, would leave him alone. And that didn't happen, and so they got rid of Kennedy. And a year later, that cost Bobby his job, and in '68, it cost him his life. So, that's how democracy works. Okay, yeah. Okay, and here you have another guy that says, subject of homosexuality, which we touch upon as well, because we want to know whether, this has something to do with the extinction, especially my argument, which is that it's in the cards that there will be more and more homosexuals from now on. They're not coming because of something they ate. They're not coming because of climate change. They're coming out of the wombs like that because we've been inbreeding for so long. And now we're in the big cities, thousands of people inbreeding in there, and whatever comes out is not going to be very sophisticated in their genes. We're all going to be more and more clones. And we're going to be seeing all kinds of genetic problems. And saying that this is a genetic type of problem. Okay, so what does homosexuality even mean? Is it being a limp-wristed femboy? Trying to understand how it differs from a fetish. If an old-fashioned gruff male is aroused by other males, is that a curable learned fetish, whereas a girly personality is an incurable innate orientation? And so, this is my answer to this fellow. Okay, homosexuality, let's define it: same-sex attraction. Doesn't mean you have to go to bed with a guy, but you're attracted by men. In the case of men, right? Women are attracted by women. Okay, so that's my definition of that: same-sex attraction. Now, the way I look at it, there's only two sexes, and that's double X and XY. That's it. There's no intermediate. Even if there's an exception out there somewhere, I'm not sure what that thing is. As I understand it, the Komodo dragon has like a Z in there. Okay. But the third sex in humans, when we talk about third sex, LGBT, XYZ, all these other things and pronouns, that's only politics. Okay, that's only because we're in the age of diversity and inclusion. Right now, every university on the planet now, especially in the United States, has created this diversity and inclusion department, which is incredible. They have this everywhere. It's like, it's a problem, and they want to make sure when you go to college, you're safe. Okay, that's a way of guaranteeing it. Okay, anyways, the way I look at it, sex is only for reproduction. Okay? Only for reproduction. Mother Nature did not make sex for enjoyment, for leisure. If you enjoy it, if you have fun with it, more power to you. That's great. And I'm sure Mother Nature kind of insinuated that in order to get you to do it. But the origin of sex there is for the purposes first only for reproduction. That was the only purpose. And the origin of sex is LECA. What the hell is LECA? Well, here we have a little rundown on this. Transition from prokaryote to proto-eukaryote to the last eukaryote common ancestor. Okay, last eukaryote common ancestor, LECA. There you have it. That's what it is. Entailed conservation, modification, and reconfiguration of pre-existing genetic circuits via mutation, horizontal gene transfer, endosymbiosis, and selection, as detailed in previous articles of this collection. Okay, during the course of this evolutionary trajectory, the LECA became sexual, reassorting and recombining chromosomes in a process that entails regulated fusions of blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the LECA became sexual originally. This is the theory, okay? It doesn't mean you have to believe it. I'm just saying this is probably the main theory out there. The LECA was sexual, is no longer a matter of speculation or debate, as evidence of sex and of genes exclusively involved in meiosis has been found in all major eukaryotic radiations. And they mentioned several papers there that stand behind that statement. Okay, so they all, apparently all these people agree, all these researchers agree that the LECA was already sexual, and eukaryote is the source of plants and animals. And so if you wonder why plants and animals have sex, well, you have to trace it here. And so I'm going to ask you, do you think this ancient eukaryote is, was that thinking pleasure? How about plants? Do plants talk about pleasure? Do they have pleasure when they have sex, when they throw their pollen at each other? Hopefully to the right sex. Throw it to the guy who throws the pollen to the other guy, I don't know. Okay, so and by the way, this is a eukaryote, okay? The organisms whose cells contain nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. There is a wide range of eukaryotic organisms, including all animals, plants, fungi, protists, etc. Okay, so the eukaryotes gave origin to plants and animals. Okay, and they're saying that our predecessor, the predecessor to eukaryotes, LECAs, they already had sex, and this is what they apparently discovered after doing research. Apparently there is quite a bit of unanimity to that. So I don't know, it's just a theory, but it sounds like a pretty good theory to me, because you have to wonder why it's plants and animals that have sex. Not all of them, I guess, I don't know. But plants and animals essentially reproduce through sex. And so sex was made for, not for pleasure, because I can't believe that plants have pleasure with sex. You might say, well, how do you know that? Well, I don't know that. I mean, I'm not a plant. I can't tell you if they have sexual pleasure at throwing the pollen, okay? I just have to think that a plant does not have all these senses that humans have, for sure. And I don't even think they have the senses of, a starfish. So, I don't know. What can I tell you? Sex was not made for pleasure, okay? If you get pleasure, that's like a bonus. It's an unwanted consequence. But sex was made for reproduction. And you cannot have reproduction between two males. You cannot have reproduction between two females. End of story. And of course, homosexuals will, especially the lobby, homosexual lobby out there, they're going to oppose that, because you're destroying their theory that, sex is for pleasure, and all they're doing is exercising their right to pleasure. Well, I have a little bit of problem with that, because I'm saying it's not for pleasure. And that tends to destroy their theory. Okay, here's a couple questions for you to ponder until next time here. Okay, and it's extinction questions that I've got for you. Okay, anyone who wants to tackle them. Will man live another 1,000 years? Okay, do you think humans will be around for next 1,000 years? How about 1,000,000 years? Okay, and again, the one that I want to focus on is the fact that for 200,000 years, we've probably been on the planet as human beings, meaning that if we go back in time, the last person we could still have viable sex with within our species would be maybe anywhere from 200 to 300,000 years ago. I call that the origin of our species, somewhere around there, okay? And so if for most of that time, maybe 90, 95% of that time, we were hunter-gatherers, okay, primarily hunters, and we were 10,000 years, maybe about 9% or so, who knows. We were farmers, agriculturalists, 0.1% of that. We were industrialists, manufacturers, the last 300 years maybe. And now for the last, 50, 60 years, we've been service providers. And now we're not going back to manufacturing. We're not going back to agriculture. We're not going back to hunting. So what, for the next 1,000 years, for the next million years, we're going to be doing the same boring things over and over again, just doing services? Or maybe the robots take over, which is, the next issue there. Will we live the next 100 years in like the service economy, or leisure unemployment, meaning the robots do everything and we just have a great time, just watch TV, just couch potatoes, maybe do gym, I don't know. Is that what we can expect for the next 100, 200, 300 years? Either unemployment, meaning in a good way, unemployment in a good way, that we don't have to work because we have the robots doing everything for us, and we have only this service economy. And then the last one, will we ever have a world government? I mean, here we have these three empires, the Chinese, the Russian, which might merge. I don't think each one trusts each other. That's my take on that. But right now they have a common enemy, which is the United States, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, and so we have these three empires. Will there ever be a world government from those three empires? Will there come a time when all the politicians shake hands and they say, okay, let's all kiss and make up, and there are no more countries, no more religions. What was it, John Lennon? No religion too. We all become one. We're just humans for the first time in our history. No more divisions. Will that ever happen? Okay. Anyways, food for thought. I hope you tackle it.